Hey there riders, MotoJourno Chris here today, and I wanted to talk about something relatively simple but that can be quite confusing for new riders, and that is motorcycle gear armour. So when we look at motorcycle gear, there's normally two areas of kind of protection that we look at. There's armour, which is impact protection, and there is abrasion resistance, which is just the material the motorcycle gear is made from, which if you're looking at jeans, in motorcycle jeans for instance, is going to be Kevlar lined jeans. In a jacket, it tends to be the textile material the jacket is made out of, not to mention any reinforcements or armor that gets added to that. And on top of that, you're also getting leather, as you'll see from this full race suit behind me. Now, leather is the king of abrasion resistance. Textile tends to be a bit of a compromise, but you know, modern textiles do a good job. It's more all-round gear though, particularly if you're looking for waterproof gear. And the armor that you're looking at is the reinforcements in the shoulder, elbow, lower arm at times, and of course your back. And then in pants, it's most often in the knees and quite often in the hips as well. So there's a lot to think about. So the industry standard in protection as it stands is CE armor, and this is a European standard for gear. And what that means basically when it comes to the armor itself is how much force that armor can absorb, or how much force will get through that armor during testing. So it pays to understand that level 1 is basic and level 2 offers a much higher level of protection. Now, what is armor going to do for you in a motorcycle accident? It's really, really simple. If you hit anything, it's going to lessen the amount of force which is transferred to you, and that in turn is what injures you in that kind of situation. So obviously, if you come off the bike and you hit something quite hard, you want armor in the important places where you're likely to hit it. Now, motorcycle gear is designed just to have the armor in the integral places, because otherwise you'd look like Batman in some big heavy duty set of armor. Now that may seem appealing from the coolness factor, but on a motorcycle it's not that appealing, because at the end of the day, the motorcycle gear that we're wearing as a general consumer tends to add to bulk and weight, and we don't want to overdo it on those things. We just want a good level of protection that we're comfortable with and that is comfortable for general riding. So what are we talking about when we look at armor? This is a really good example. This is just a CE protector. It's a knee armor that goes in a pair of jeans. Really, really simple. It just slips into place. And if I were to go down on my knees, the level of protection that offers is really good. And of course, also, it'd take a fair bit of abrasion to wear through that, as well as whatever extra protection might be offered by, say, Kevlar lining in the knees. Now, that kind of armor can be found across a variety of different parts of your motorcycle armor, as I mentioned: shoulders, lower arm, and of course your back. Now the back varies a little bit because the base kind of armor provided in most jackets is very, very basic, and there's a reason for that. Number 1, to keep costs down, and number 2, because upgrading something like this, which is just a very heavy duty foam which is going to help protect your spine and back if you hit anything, that can be easily replaced by an upgrade. And when I talk upgrades, I'm talking about something like this. This is a proper kind of race style back protector. Now, does that mean that you only wear it for racing? Not at all. This is the perfect kind of piece of kit that you could wear if you're out sport riding and you wanted to really beef up the spinal protection. And I gotta say, if I was to hit my back on something, if I came off the bike, this is what I'd want to be wearing. For the daily commute, I'll settle for that high density foam, which just goes in a regular jacket. But if I'm getting serious, something like this adds a whole new level of protection and is much more ideal for keeping your spine in the one piece. Another thing to think about when we look at the off-road side of things is you get much beefier protection. So hopefully you can see this here. This is a knee guard. This is actually a relatively basic knee guard. It does not offer the protection of the brace, but if you were to get smacked in the shins or the knee by something like a big stick or a rock as you were riding, or you were to come off your bike and land on your knees, the level of protection that's going to offer is going to be exceptional. So that's really, really important. And that ties back in to the kind of armor that you can get in, say, an off-road armored top. This offers all the protection you'd get in a normal textile jacket. It's got shoulder armor, lower armor on the arms. It's actually got armor on the chest, which is a little bit less usual on most road gear, and you're getting a much beefier back protector in this, which is of course important because you're probably not going to be strapping on a set of armor like this over the top of off-road gear. When it comes to the CE armor itself, the important thing to look for is CE approved. CE tested means that it's just been tested to those standards. It doesn't necessarily mean it's passed. CE certified means it has met a certain standard, and CE approved means that the garment itself is CE approved, which is important when you're looking at whole pieces of gear because that is a more advanced standard than someone who may not have certified at all. And obviously one of the arguments that's going to come up is to say, well, you know, it's a European certification, so maybe for brands in other parts of the world it's not worth their time and their effort getting it certified. That's certainly true. But if that's the case, you want to check if there's a local certification that they've met and how that interacts with the European certification, because that's kind of an industry standard as it stands at the moment, and you want to make sure that you're getting a decent level of protection. Sometimes you will see motorcycle gear which is pretty basic. It might be the more styling kind of motorcycle gear, and you know, for some people that works, but the level of protection that offers can be very, very limited. And so you might be out there riding thinking, well, if anything goes wrong, I'm well protected, I've invested in the right kind of gear, and you might find that the gear really does not meet your expectations at all. That's why it's important to kind of check what you're purchasing and make sure that it meets at least some kind of standard. And that's why I always look for CE. I think that's a really good standard to look for. And it's also why I try and make sure that when I'm buying gear or when I get gear to test, I make sure it's something that I personally would want to wear. Now this is a good time to bring up my XO3 Dry Rider jacket. I wanted a mesh jacket for summer riding. I wanted a good level of protection, but I was looking at those mesh jackets and thinking, just personally, I want some leather, because leather has the abrasion resistance and it adds a little bit of toughness to a mesh jacket, which of course the mesh tends to be, you know, a weak point in the jacket. That's why in most of these jackets, they're designed in a way that the mesh isn't on the high abrasion areas if you come off the bike, but I wanted leather, and that's why something like this to me is such a good investment. It's got a high level of protection in those leather armors as far as the level of abrasion resistance you're going to get. It's got a good amount of armor in it as well. It's got a back protector, it's got the lower arm protectors, and it breathes incredibly well in summer, so I don't feel like I'm wearing some huge bulky jacket which is really impacting on my riding. And that's an important aspect of everything too, to be comfortable while you're riding. So you want to wear your gear because it's important you wear it, you've spent your money on it, you want the protection it offers, and you want to be happy on a day-to-day basis riding. So I hope this has given you a very basic idea of what we're talking about when we talk motorcycle gear, armor, and CE approval. It's important that you do buy some gear which is going to do its best job possible as far as protecting you in any kind of situation. There's always going to be a compromise being made. You could be out there buying MotoGP level gear with airbags in it and things like that, but you might end up spending more than your bike for that kind of protection. And for most of us, that's just not something that we're going to be able to do. Maybe in 10 years time when the technology's moved on and it's a lot more affordable, we'll all be wearing that kind of gear. But as it stands for now, we've got to make compromises as to what we buy. So it's important that you do buy something that has some level of certification so you know the protection on offer. So if you've got any questions or if there's anything you think I've missed, just let me know in the comments. Really appreciate you watching this video. As always, stay safe out there. It's pouring with rain here at the moment, so a bit of a dangerous time to be out on the roads. Of course, be extra careful. A lot of drivers cannot cope with even the least amount of rain, and I'll be back soon. Thank you.